really no problem about that at all. Now, yeah, okay, good. Now, really the idea I want to start is here in this introduction. As you can see my screen, correct?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
very good. Yeah. First, I must maybe before I continue. Do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? Any ideas? Any suggestions? Anything? Any comments? Any questions before we? Everything is fine? Good. As I told you, please feel free to talk to me and to interrupt me and to say things anytime you like, no problem. I will never be upset or anything. You just say whatever you feel you want to say. Now, in this introduction here, as you can see, I say what is really here. I'm trying to tell you what is poetry. Now, how do you know a poem? Of course, the first thing really, to be honest with you, boys and girls. Yeah?
I'm trying to come to the to open the class from my other device. Please accept it.
What device?
My laptop.
What's your name? Fatima?
Yes.
Is you okay now?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, good. But because I didn't see that you have you're asking permission. Okay, good. Any other thing?
No, please continue.
Yeah, okay, good. Now, I must say really here is when we, for example, ask the question, how do you know a poem? How do you know a poem? What are the things that will tell you that this is a poem and this is not a poem? You know, the first thing really is by the way it looks, by the form, by the outside appearance, by the style. I mean, the way it's really printed out on the page. The first thing is by the way you write it, the way you see it on the page. So we say here the form of the language itself, or the form of the written text itself. So really, this is the first thing, the first impression you will get is by the form of the poem. So we say here, in studying any literary text, let alone a poem, we look first at the form and the language of that text. Form and language actually tell us a lot about the text. So here in poetry, immediately we say, oh, this is poetry? Oh, no, this is not poetry. Why? Because it looks like not being poetry. So we check here things immediately. So the format, the form is important in poetry. Of course, there are many other things, and I'm trying to tell you here what are these things really today. Now, first we say here, I say number one, check in a dictionary any vocabulary items we don't understand. When you study any poem, and in fact, we always say this to our students, please try to, whenever you study, for example, mainly poetry, because there are many sometimes strange words or strange images or strange vocabulary and so on and so on. So really it's needed to check a dictionary to get and to understand things. Again, you say, you ask yourself, who is speaking here in this poem? Who is speaking? Is it a woman? Is it a man? Is it a boy? Is it an old man? Is it an animal? Is it a society? Or who is speaking? So here you have to, again, ask yourself this question to understand the speaker, right? So we say, what situation is being written about? Again, here you say, what is the topic, meaning, what is the topic? Is it about nature? Is it about love? Is it about concept? About war? About people? You know, so the topic. So we say the topic could be abstract, could be realistic, could be descriptive, could be thematic, etc. So here again, we ask these questions. And number three, I say, look for any sense of relations in the poem. Like, do we have opposites? Do we have parallels? Do we have imagery? Do we have etc.? So here you see what are the things that are related. This phrase is like this one. There is contradiction. There is whatever. So we look at the sense of relations, or maybe not relations. Again, we say check the movement between the first line and the last line, or the next line, and so on. So here we look at the tempo and the way the lines are moving and the words and so on. So these are the immediate thing that you can see when you read a poem, the way how you read it. And actually, really, poetry is different from prose, because the way you read poetry, and as I will show you, later on, you will see really by the way you read, the way you use the voice, go up and down, and the tempo, as I said, and the rhythm, and all these tonal thing, really says or say a lot of things about poetry. Now, this means that in any serious reading of a poem, we need to explore the various aspects or elements of poetry, or what we say components of poetry. And here I go on about these components again. It's the same thing like when we did last year or last term, when you talked about character, theme, action, blah, 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 narrator, symbol, setting, the same thing here in poetry, the same thing. We have the elements here, we call them elements of poetry. And the first element is form, I said. The look of the text, the stanzas, the punctuation, the sentence boundaries, the run-on lines, or the sonnet, or the ballad, blah, 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 blah. All these formalistic elements, or these, forms or formats, if you like, really prove to us and tell us that this is a poem. Okay, as I said, you look at it, you look at how many lines in each stanza. We have stanzas, not paragraphs. We look at the punctuations. We look at the sentences, how long the sentences are, how many punctuations do I have, and so on. Do I have very long lines, or do we have special sonnets every 3 lines, every 4 lines, every 5 lines, blah, blah, blah. So these are to do with the form, as I said. The next point I say here, words. Again, do I look at these words? Are they familiar words or not familiar words? Strange words, simple words, complex words, difficult words, Anglo-Saxon words, or Latinate words, or Latin words, or maybe other, for example, words like dialect, or colloquial words, or archaic words, or concrete, or abstract, blah, blah. So here you look at exactly the words, themselves. So this is the next point. And the images, again, here we look at the imagery. The images, do we have, how many similes do I have? How many metaphors do I have? How many connotations, etc. So I look at the imagery, and I think here, always in poetry, we have to have this idea very clear. And the voice, again, number 4, voices, as I said, the speaker, who is speaking, who is speaking. And do I have an audience here? Do I have listeners? Do I have people? Do I have characters? Do I have, people like you say, you, I, they, or others, etc. So I ask about these voices in the poem. So again, number 5, tone, again, say whether it's a serious tone or light tone, or argumentative, or sad, or miserable, or, comic, or anything. Again, sound, again, here to talk, sound is like in a way the voice to some extent, or maybe to do with the words, which is the rhythm, really, the rhythm, the rhyme. Notice fast or slow, for example, language. Do I read this in a slow way, or do I go up and down? Do I have a lot of alliterations or assonances or stresses or rhythm or rhyme, the music, etc., etc.? So the musicality of the poem, because really, really, ladies and gentlemen, poetry is music. Because really, we shall see this, and I will tell you later on about that. Because some people really said or defined poetry. They said it's some kind of violence committed against language. Really, this is a strange Russian-American critic. Originally Russian critic called Vladimir Prop. And Vladimir Prop, he said this, he said that language or poetry, he said it's violence committed against language, which is really very strange definition of poetry. Yeah, well, could be, because he used the word violence, which is really a very strange word to say how violence is committed against language. Because that's what, for him, that's what poetry is. You know, you want to force something on the language itself. And number 7 here is the question of the appeal. The appeal, again, we say, what kind of music, what kind of I say the impact, what kind of emotion, what kind of, you know, what do we feel? You know, this is, of course, we say the appeal, how we react, how we feel towards the poem. And I think this is important all the time. Sometimes you say, oh, I love this poem. Oh, I hate this poem. Oh, whatever. So this is what we say, appeal. Now, in this brief introduction here, again, we will think about these key questions. How is poetry different from prose fiction? And again, he said, what's poetry and what's the function of poetry? What are some key features or elements of poetry and forms of poetry? Now, here I talk a lot here for you. Here you have a nice introduction. Please read all this because it's quite really important to understand this when you read or look at a poem. I will highlight it for you quickly here this morning. In reading, for example, I say any literary text, we need to understand all those elements of artistic creation, which involves the writer's position and the reader's involvement or distance or empathy or sympathy, etc., towards the text. It means when we read any text, we feel whether we want it or we don't want it. You know, this is the idea, empathy and sympathy and the involvement, and, you know, you feel you are distant from it, you don't want to be involved in it, and so on. So this idea of the response and the reactions we feel about that is quite really interesting and important. Now, here, the broad term of literature, of course, we know when we say literature, and I think I said this to you before, you know, we have all kinds of genres, like poetry, novel, short story, drama, essay, biography, autobiography. And I think we did this last year or last term in Introduction to Literature 1. And I mentioned to you about all these genres, you know, the differences, the types, the kinds of literature. As I said, this course will focus only on poetry and drama, as you can say. Again, we can still say, well, yeah, they are fictional. Why? Because that's also imaginative. Because the word fictional doesn't mean only the story, it doesn't mean the novel, doesn't mean the fable. Anything fictional, which means imaginative, because poetry is imaginative, you know, because you create it, you make it out of your mind, you know, out of your own imagination. It's not realistic. As I said, it's taken from reality, it's borrowed from reality, it's something like reality, it's something close to reality, but it's not reality. I told you this before and I will repeat it. Literature is never reality, is never reality. It is something like reality, something related to reality, something, you know, as I said, maybe, you know, deducted from reality, and so on. So that's why we have people like us, you know, who are, for example, in plays and novels and so on. So that's why in a play, as we shall see, or in a poem, as we said, in a short story, we have tragedies or comedies or, you know, satires or tragicomedy or romance, blah, blah, blah. All these things, again, are really important here. Now, in any poem, again, we look at the style or the diction. Notice we use the word style or diction, really diction, or the technique, the way the way you manipulate, the way you use the language. Really, the way you use the language is what's called diction, or as I say here, technique. Diction can be discussed here under, really, when you say denotation or connotation, or concrete or abstract, or we have poetic diction. You know, here I try to explain these three, if you like, differences here briefly for you. You know, denotation, notice here, the first heading involves that any English word has three component parts: sound, denotation, and connotation. Connotation is very important in poetry, for it's one of the means by which the poet can enrich meaning, to say more in fewer words. This multiplicity or ambiguity of meaning possessed by words in a source for the poet. Meaning, when you say connote, means tell you something more and more and more, not exact words, because denotation or denote means the exact meaning, you know, like the dictionary meaning. Whereas connotation, it might, you know, bring to your mind so many other things, so many other associations, so many other ideas. And that's really, if you like, here the idea when we say, notice, we say under the second heading, we can say that reality comes to us largely through the sense or the experience, our senses. Generally, we realize the text through seeing or tasting and feeling it. Poetry, for instance, appeals directly to our senses through its music or rhythm, but indirectly to our senses through imagery. And so this is the idea. So I'm saying that in poetry, we dream and we fly away with the words, with the language. We remember and maybe think of other things, not exactly the same words, but we dream and maybe we fly away from reality as itself. Okay, so let me. Okay, sorry for a little interruption. So the idea I want to say here is, as you can see, about the question of connotation and denotation, we say that poetry is really to do with that. And again, we say here, like the question of imagery, you know, an image may represent a picture, like a visual imagery or a sound, auditory imagery, or a smell, or like a touch or an internal sensation, and so on. Such images are called, you know, concrete, as opposed to ideas that may be abstract. You know, the thing that you can touch and see as being concrete. But sometimes things which you can't see and you can't touch, we call them abstract. And I think this is, I think, very clear to us to understand here. So in poetry, we find this. Poetry really takes us to all domains of life here, as I say, as it's concerned with all kinds of experience, you know, beautiful or ugly, strange or common, noble or ignoble, actual or imaginary, and so on and so on. So you see all these things really invoked and used in poetry. Now, if you like, we can say here, the next paragraph, I say, the difference between poetry and other forms of literature lies in that poetry can be recognized by the arrangement of its lines on the page. As I said, we say here the use of rhyme and meter. And here again, I go back to the form. And I think I will show you later on, I will show you as an example the difference between poetry and prose in a minute. So in poetry, because we have this meter, as I will show you later on, we always need to paraphrase, to rephrase, to rewrite poetry into our own language. And this is what we call paraphrasing. Notice here we say, to interpret and analyze a poem, the first thing to do is to understand it as at the simplest level, that is to paraphrase it. And the paraphrase may be longer or shorter than the poem. You see, here I'm going to please understand this, because some of my students last year or last term did not really do this in a good way. When I say paraphrase, means rewrite the poem in your own language. Keep the meanings and the ideas and so on and so forth. Maybe you can use some of the words exactly as they are in the poem, but you have to elaborate and to explain. And because that's what paraphrase means, to rephrase and to expand the phrases. So that's the idea. Paraphrase may be longer. I really should say should be longer than the poem. It should contain all the ideas in the poem in such a way as to make them clear or to make the poem more accessible. Means to understand it, to write it in prose. Because sometimes we say poetry is difficult, whereas prose, we make it simpler. We make it easier to understand. And that's why I will ask you in the exam, and now I'm telling you from the first day, in the exam, I will give you an unseen poem or a seen poem, unseen poem, and you have to paraphrase it, to explain it in your own way and to explain all the ideas and so on. Okay, so that's why I say here, paraphrasing a poem means explaining it into simpler, plainer, and more direct prose. Okay, I will show you this later on, of course, when we study more poems. Are you following, boys and girls?
Yes, Dr.
Yes, yes.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. Somebody? Yeah.
Doctor, what does an unseen poem mean?
Unseen poem means a poem I have not given in class.
All right.
Unseen means you did not see it here with me. Unseen, maybe you have seen it yourself, maybe you have studied it yourself, maybe you are a poet, you read it somewhere, maybe you are a good reader, you read it somewhere. Well, good for you. But unseen means for me a poem which I did not explain in class. Okay? Yeah. So the following, I say the following figures of speech show how we compare and relate the images through the workings of our own minds. Like, for example, here again, we look again about the figures of speech, to go back here to imagery and images, imagery and images. And this is what we say, we use the personification or the simile. And I will come to these later on, boys and girls. I will come back to this, to these ideas. I will explain them. I'll explain them to you in details later on. So we have personification, like simile, metaphor, analogy, allusion, etc., etc. Right? So we use all these things. We refer to them and we define them. And I gave you these in a brief summary about poetry terms or poetry terminologies. Okay, I will come back to this with you later on. Really, boys and girls, here I want to go about the question here when we say the question of versification, or the use of versification or prosody. Here we say the difference between, poets when they use, and I think this is we have done this in we know this in Arabic. In Arabic we have that, and in English we have the same way, because poets think about how to write their poem, because there is some kind of style, there is some kind of law, there is some kind of meter, we call meter. There is a system, there is a law, and this is what's called here really versification or prosody, or the use of meter or and rhythm. In Arabic, really, we say this al-arud, fan al-arud. You know the word?
Yes.
Yes, we are aware of that.
Yeah, exactly. So in Arabic we say fa'ulun, mafa'ilu, fa'ilatu, right? Mikarrin, mifarrin, muqbilin, mudbirin, ma'an. This bum, 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 right? This is, of course, the rhythm. And this is to do with the meter. And this is to do with the versification. Fa'ulun, fa'ulun, fa'ilatu, mafa'ilu, etc. This is the same line. Mikarrin, mifarrin, muqbilin, mudbirin, ma'an. This is exactly fa'ulun, 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 fa'ilatu. This is what we call versification. This is what we call prosody. And this is what we call meter, al-bahr. We say in Arabic, buhur al-sha'r, al-bahr. Okay? In Arabic, that's it. In English, of course, we have the same. But in Arabic, we have 16 meters. 16 meters. Abu Khalil al-Farahidi, and I don't know this, who made this, the question of Buhur al-Sha'r in Arabic, we have 16 meters. In English, we have only four. And again, luckily, we only use one or two. Very rarely we use any other meter. And we call this meter, okay? So poets use versification, use prosody, use meter to measure their poem. And that's why we say, this is not rhymed. Like in Arabic, you say, Wallahi, هذا البيت مكسور. أنت لست بشاعر. هذا البيت مكسور. We say مكسور, isn't it? Means it's not really فعول فعول فعول, and this is the idea. So poets pay attention to, and I will show you this later on, I will give you this in details, boys and girls. The writers here, if you like, or poets, use metric verse, or sometimes they don't. Some people say, I don't like this meter, and they write free verse, called free verse, like in Arabic, ash-sha'r al-hurr. And I think, to me, poets who write free verse because they hate, or between us they can't, or maybe they are not really good poets. To me, a poet is a poet who can write really, rhymed really poetry. Because sound is one of the component parts of the word, the poet chooses words for their sounds and the pleasure of their music, as well as for their meaning. He uses the sound as a means of reinforcing meaning and communication, etc., etc. So really, this is the idea about the question of versification. I want you really to always say this, and I will show you this example later on. I will show you this idea later on about, how writers use this, and I will read for you a lot of that to show you the example about versification and about musicality. So the choice, yeah.
Doctor, I was actually about to ask this question. Do we have in English like a Sha'r al-Hur as a form of, let's say, an official poem?
You mean in English, do we have free
Yes.
verses set?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Oh yeah, we have a lot.
Is it? Yeah. It's common.
Oh yeah, today, 20th century, yeah. A lot is common, and I will give you so many examples. Yes, absolutely, very common and written by huge, amazing, big names. But to me, I'm saying to you, to me, Mahmoud Salami, I don't like, well, sometimes I do, but many times I feel, I don't know, this is my own personal opinion, okay? But there are many poets, absolutely many great poets who write in modern free verse one. For example, you can't say to Mahmoud Darwish, you are not a poet, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, Mahmoud Darwish, of course, maybe people will kill me if I say he's not a poet, Yeah, you see, this is the idea. And there are names in English, and I will show you later on. For example, I will show you today, poems written by huge, big names in American poetry or in English poetry. Again, how dare I to say that he's not a poet? People again will kill me if I say that. But I will say it because we live in a free world, so no problem.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we are not going to study them.
Yeah. I will show you some of those. Yes, I will show you some of those. Of course, I will. We will study some of them.
Do they have the same elements?
Oh, yes, I will show you that. Yeah, absolutely. They have many other elements, but maybe the only missing element is the meter. The only missing is the meter and the rhyme. No rhyme, no meter. But everything else, the music, the sounds, the imagery, the speaker, the tone, the symbol, etc., it's all there. I will show you this. I will show you, Ya Abdurrahman.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, I like your comments. Very good, Abdurrahman.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. Do I have two Abdurrahmans? Oh, yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. What is this, Abdurrahman?
Al-Abrawi. Al-Abrawi.
How do you say this in Arabic? Al-Abrawi.
Al-Abrawi, yes.
Now I'm going to ask you a difficult question. What's Al-Abrawi? From Ibra?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
And what is Ibra, by the way? No idea, doctor. Come on, please. Are you now in Ibra?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Yeah. In Ibra, they have a college there, don't they?
Yeah, and they have a university.
Is it now a university?
Yeah, they have a college and they have a university.
Really?
Yeah. College of Technology.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. I've never been there, but I've heard people talking about it. Anyway, yeah, you said Al-Ibrawi.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, very good, yeah, Abdurrahman, yeah, Ibrawi. Thank you very much. This is good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments? Basmala, where are you?
I'm here.
I'm used to listening to your comments. You say good things. Where are you?
I don't interested in English poem.
Oh, you are not interested in English poetry. Basmala, at the end of this course, I assure you, you will start to like English poetry. I assure you. And you will start writing poetry at the end of this course. ها؟ عم تحلم يا دكتور؟
Maybe.
عم تحلم يا دكتور؟ Marwa said, I agree with Basmala.
Doctor,
Yeah?
are we going to study about Mark Twain's poems?
Mark Twain's poems? I don't know. I don't think I have any Mark Twain poem, but yeah, if you want to, if you share something, if you want, yeah, I don't know if I have in my booklet. I don't know if I have given you any Mark Twain. Do you know any of Mark Twain's poems?
No, I read his books, but I have never.
No, I
read
have
a poem.
actually. I've actually Mark Twain, of course. I know him to be a great novelist and short story writer,
Yes.
but he must have written some poems. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I have read any of his poems,
I
but
think
I will
he-
check. I will check. No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go back to this. So we where are we? I'm talking here about all these questions of versification. So as I said, we have to look at the phrases. We have to look at the vowels. Like for example, the versification. I said poets repeat, or poet repeats certain sounds in certain combinations and arrangements. Poet repeat individual vowels, consonant sounds, you know, whole syllables, words, phrases, lines, etc., etc. In any good poem, we have always sometimes like this, and we use, as I said, the rhythm and the rhyme. You know, we really here we pay attention to the way we see it and the way as we say, we listen to it, and so on. So I say that a syllable here again, we say in poetry we have to define the difference between a syllable and a word. Really, you know, a syllable always consists of a vowel sound that may be preceded by or followed by, you know, a consonant sound or other consonant sounds. You know, always we, in a syllable, one unit, one sound unit, one sound unit, you know, and I will explain to you later on about that. Any of these sounds may be repeated, and the result, we call this alliteration, or we say assonance, or we say consonance, and I will explain that to you later again, boys and girls. Don't worry about that. I will not worry at the moment here, because this is only an introduction. I want you to read that quickly, because, for example, here I will give you, later I will show you that really. Notice here, for example, any of these kinds of repetition may be used alone or in combination, like alliteration and assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds. You know, here, for example, we say, are combined in the phrase like time and tide. You know, time and tide. Notice here, alliteration, right? And I, tie and tide. You know, this I, here again, the repetition of the vowel by Edgar Allan Poe, for example. Again, we say the violet and the viol, the viol and the violet and the vine. Notice vi. You know, again, the same thing, alliteration here, the va sound. Again, consonance here really is what I said, the repetition of the consonant sounds. Like when you say, notice here, last but not least, here the L sound. Last but not least. Again, you know, this is like one Moult and Milton. Later on, I will show you this as examples, ladies and gentlemen. And I think you will learn these things and they will become clear to you, and we will practice a lot of that together here in the course. Okay, So again, we come to the rhyme, or we come to the meter. Again, here, as I told you, we have meters, and we have metered the rhyme, or free rhyme, and free verse, or whatever. So in poetry, to know the rhyme, or to know the meter, we call this scansion, to scan the line, because we want to see the lines here. For example, here I show you the second way. The arrangement of accents like rhythm and meter results from the fact that everything we do naturally and gracefully, we do rhythmically. There is rhythm in the way we walk. There is rhythm in the way we swim. There is also, he said, the way we ride a horse. Yeah, I think there is. And all language is some degree rhythmical. For all language involves some kind of alternation between accented and unaccented syllables. Means stressed or unstressed, stressed and unstressed. These accents or stressed sounds are indicated in the dictionary. And you can see this, as I said, in metrical sounds, like notice here where I say metrical sounds, or language. Notice here I say metrical language, stress on m and l, isn't it? I said metrical. I didn't say metrical. I say metrical, stress on m, and language. I didn't say language. You understand? So this is what we mean by stress and the accent. And you'll find this in the dictionary when you open any dictionary, and I will show you that later on. And we know these syllables here. So we say in metrical language or in verse, the accents are arranged or to occur on equal regular intervals of time. For measuring these intervals in verse, we use the foot or the line or the stanza. The process of measuring verse is called scansion. As we say, تقطيع. We say in Arabic, تقطيع بحور الشعر, تقطيع بحر الشعر, or تقطيع, etc. Right? We say scansion, scanning. In English, we say to scan, and scansion means to divide the syllables, really to divide the syllables. And I will show you this again later on. Metrical language, not necessarily poetry, called verse or metric verse, right? Non-metrical language or called prose, okay? So really this is the idea that as we say in Arabic, we say الشعر الموزون, موزون, وزن. There is mizan here, and the mizan here really is the meter. When you say fa'ulun, fa'ulun, fa'ulu, this is the mizan and this is the meter. In English, the same thing. In English, the same thing. Unstressed stress, unstressed stress, unstressed stress. You say, remind me not, remind me not. Remind me not, remind me not. I will show you this later on. So this is what we call metric or non-metric. Of course, non-metric is prose, normal prose. And here I again give more information. Note that it's not generally desirable to write in perfectly regular meter. The reason is that we enjoy art because it consists of repetition and variation. And if a meter is too regular, variation is banished and the meter becomes mechanical and monotonous. On the other hand, here I give more and more elaboration about that. Of course, I think this is very clear. Later on, I will show you this. Now here, for example, I say that, the three most common types of poems. We have lyrical poems, we have elegy, and we have the sonnet. Lyric, elegy, sonnet. Lyric, elegy, sonnet. Lyric is a poem with one speaker, not necessarily the poet, who expresses strong thoughts and feelings, strong thoughts and feelings. And that's why it's called lyric. You know, and sometimes in Arabic, they call this, what do you think they call it, yeah, Abdurrahman?
You mean the lyrical poetry?
Yeah?
Lyric poetry?
Yeah? Anybody?
It's very
شعر
general
مغنى
in English.
الشعر المغنى?
maybe.
No, I don't think so.
Well, who said this?
فايز.
Faiz, yeah, Faiz, you are close. We don't say al-mughanna, we say, like what you say, al-unshuda, really. Oh, somebody was raising, please speak up, don't raise your hand, because sometimes I can't see. Amr said al-Ghazaliya, al-Ghazali. No, it's
I think,
actually,
this
yeah?
is descriptive poetry.
Yeah, well, yeah. In Arabic, they call this al-inshuda. Sometimes they use the word inshuda. Really, it's like, yeah, as you said, al-mughanna to some extent. Yeah, so a lot of music today, many songs, they say the lyrics, you know, we say the lyric writer, who wrote the lyrics, who wrote the song itself, to say, well, this is again, you know, if you like, we say the real actual writer of the words. They call them lyric, but you see, they use the word because of this idea that really the feelings and the thoughts and the ideas are very strong. Most poems, I say here, really, most poems in English, especially in modern poetry, and I think not just in modern, even going back to Chaucer, really, very old poetry, you know, most of Shakespeare's poetry is lyrical. A lot of romantic poetry in 19th century is also lyrical. In fact, our friend, you know, Wordsworth and Coleridge, they wrote a huge book of poetry. They call it lyrical ballads. Lyrical ballads. Later on, we shall see this. Now, again, notice elegy, it is a lyric poem. Come on. So there's no really big difference, or there's no real difference here, isn't it? Again, I say the sonnet, again, they say the sonnet is a lyric poem. Oh, come on, doctor. What's this? Isn't it? So are we saying here all poetry is lyrical? Yes. In a way, yes. But sometimes they say elegy because of the idea or the questions in it, and the sonnet because of the form. That's why they call it a sonnet, you know. And I think this is, I feel this is really, there's no big deal to differentiate between the three, as you can see. Now, it's a lyric poem that mourns the dead. It has no set metric or stanzaic pattern. You know, this is the idea. It's not fixed, if you like. It usually begins by reminiscing about the dead person, then laments the reason for the death, and then resolve the grief that death leads to immortality, and so on. So, as we say in Arabic, arritha, really, arritha, you know, when you talk about somebody who died or recently died or whatever. Now, the sonnet is only, as I said, because of the form of it and the style of it and the rhyme of it, they call it a sonnet. The sonnet is a lyrical poem. Sonnets fall into two types: the Italian sonnet, or we call it the Petrarchan sonnet, and the English sonnet or Shakespearean sonnet. So two types. Petrarchan from Petrarch. Petrarch was the Italian poet. And the English or Shakespearean sonnet. Poets of the lyric style use words that express their feelings, perceptions, and moods, etc. So again, we can say, well, there are more classified phrases you can say about that. Like, for example, you say here an epic poem, or an elegy, or a ballad, or an ode. Again, the word ode could be seen as inshuda, the same thing, or a lyric, and so on. Really, even the word ode today, they use the word inshuda in the same way, really like a song. Anyway, so these words and phrases you will see later on together.
Doctor,
Now, ladies and gentlemen, look at this. Can you tell me what is the difference between this one and the next one on the right here? I say here are two texts which are about the same topic. How is the poem different from the letter? Which version has more meaning for you? Why? Yeah? Read this and tell me what do you think?
Doctor, the letter seems like more polite than the other one.
Amir speaking?
Yes, doctor.
Well, I started to recognize your voice. Yes, yeah, Amir.
Doctor, the letter here or the words in the box seems more polite than the other one.
Yeah, more polite. Yeah. Yeah, do you agree? What else? Yeah? But why the other one? Why is this a poem?
Because of the shape, maybe.
The form.
The style of the
Maybe
The
the
rhythm.
choice of word.
The rhythm that it has.
The shape.
Maybe the
Yeah.
choice of words, maybe made it a poem.
Yeah, very good. Very good. I like your comments here. Look at the first one here. Where are, no punctuations whatsoever, no full stops, no commas, nothing. Huh? Nothing. I have eaten the plums. I have eaten the plums that were in the ice box, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. And this is an American, absolutely American, strong American poet. If I tell him, come on, William, come on, my friend, William Carlos Williams, is this poetry? Come on, man. Now, look at the idea. The second one here is a message written on dear mom, comma. Dear M means mom, really. This is just to say that I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, comma, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious, so sweet and so cold, as Simon or whoever is saying this. Now, look at this. It's the same message, exactly the same message, the same meaning, the same idea. Why do we say this is poetry, whereas this is not poetry? Huh?
The other one follow the writing rules like punctuation and etc. But the first one doesn't. So the first one breaks the rules to make a certain words sounds more poetic, but the second one doesn't. The second one follow a certain rules or a certain grammar rule. Maybe I don't know. That,
Yeah.
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 In my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Okay, Faiz. Yes. Yeah. But again, when you look at it, I say, well, really, boys and girls, really here, I say, well, this is the same meaning, the same message, exactly the same message. No difference. No difference. The same idea, the same message, the same language, the same words even. But of course, the way I read this, William Carlos Williams here really wants us to read this like in poetry. When you read this message, for example, dear mom, this is just to say that I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox. You were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious, so sweet and so cold. S. Signing. This is a normal prose, absolutely normal prose, a message written by a boy to his mother on the fridge, saying, whoa, I found lovely plums in the fridge and I've eaten them, right? But in the poem, the writer wants us to say, look at this normal, absolutely normal, down to earth, even sometimes meaningless language can be made into poetry. And the way you read that, it could make it poetical, make it poetical. I've eaten the plums. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. Well, I will show you another funny thing by our friend here, by William Carlos Williams. Let me show you another funny poem by him. Look at it here. William Carlos Williams, page here 45. Look at this poem. Hey, look at this poem. Can you see it? Amir.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Is this a poem?
Yes, doctor, yes.
Is this a poem?
It seems so, yes, doctor.
It looks like poem, isn't it?
Yeah.
It looks like
Meaningless poem.
Basmala.
Wallah,
Yeah,
Dr.
well, yeah. Yeah, this is the title. Look at the title, The Red Wheelbarrow. The Red Wheelbarrow. Wheelbarrow? Something that farmers use in their farms to carry, stuff in their farms. Could be to carry earth, to carry fuddle, or to carry dung.
Like a wagon?
It's a small wagon which you, as a human being, it has one wheel in front.
Yes, you drag it.
We know it.
And you carry it like this, like two handles, like a bicycle, and you push it, right? You push it.
Still use it till today.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I like it. I have one in my own place, in my own home in Syria, in my own farm. I have this, and it's a really very useful and good thing.
We call it
And this
Urbana.
called, sorry?
Urbana in Omani.
What is it called?
Urbana.
Urbana.
Yeah.
Urbana. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, Urbana. Well, we say in Syrian, we say Al-Arabiya. Yeah, we say the same thing, Al-Arabiya.
almost
We
close.
say, we say العربية. هاتها العربية يا ولد. We say, hey, son, get me this عربية. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
But look at this poem. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rain and water, beside the white chickens. What?
When you read it like that, it sounds like a poem.
Yeah,
He is
exactly.
He's
Yeah.
a bad poem writer.
William Carlos Williams is a great 20th century, a great big name. And look at this. You were asking me about modern poetry written by yeah. But the way you read this, so much depends upon, wow, ya lil ya ain, huh? Come on. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rain water beside the white chickens. If you translate this to Arabic, wilah wili, isn't it?
It will be funny.
Yeah, it will make sense.
Ah,
What does glazed mean?
glazed means, really means is shining, is absolutely shining with beauty.
فيها لمعة.
Because it's metal.
It
So
sounds
much
funny.
depends. الكثير والكثير يعتمد على تلك العربية الحمراء. العربية الحمراء التي تلمع اللامعة التي تلمع بإيش؟ with rain water.
بماء
بماء المطر. بماء المطر. الله الله. Isn't it? Come on.
Yeah, it is like that.
Yeah.
ناصعة بماء المطر.
Yeah. And beside the white chicken.
But what is the point of this poem? What is trying to deliver? What is the idea there?
Exactly. Yes, that's the idea. Again, beside the white chickens. يعني المركونة هناك جنب الدجاجات البيضاء جنب الدجاجة البيضاء.
So he is only trying to describe a wagon?
I say, come on, man. When you think about it,
it sounds like a meaningless poem, but what he is trying to convey,
I don't think
I
it's a
understand
meaningless
it.
poem.
yeah,
I think dream.
I think
Yeah.
if you understand poems, it's not about what's the meaning of it.
Exactly. What is the meaning?
exactly. Yeah.
It's not always.
Yeah. Very good. Look at my questions. I took away from the book, the reference book that we have, and look at the questions. Do you hear a voice in this poem? Who's speaking here? Do you hear a voice in this poem? What kind of voice is it? Again, why doesn't William capitalize the letters? Why doesn't William use punctuation in this poem? Do you like the way this poem is composed? And so on. You know, you say, come on, what depends upon a red wheelbarrow?
The farm, Doctor.
Can you imagine somebody? Who do you think the speaker here? Who do you think?
A farmer?
Who do you, sorry?
Maybe a farmer. The speaker is a farmer, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because a farmer will look at his wheelbarrow in a romantic way. The way he would look at this red wheelbarrow and say, wow, this, because he's saying so much depends upon.
So is he trying to convey the idea that a wheelbarrow is so important for the farmer?
Exactly. He
That's
said,
the point of the
yeah.
whole poem?
Yeah. I said this, as if to say, this red wheelbarrow to me is like this, you know, Chevrolet or really JMC 4-wheel driver.
Now I get it. Now I get it. Thank you.
This red wheelbarrow to me is like a huge, lovely truck, which is like, you know, whatever truck you feel, that fancy, lovely truck you find today here on the roads of Muscat, for example. They said, to me, this red wheelbarrow, to me, is a huge, lovely, shining, lovely, absolutely lovely, you know, maybe I should say limousine, maybe. You understand?
I think, can I say
Yes.
something, Doctor?
Sorry?
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think most of the poems are like this. If we want to understand the writer, we gotta put ourselves in his situation. So when he says so much depends upon the red wheelbarrow, he's explaining how important it is. And then when he said glides with rain water, when I see it in my eyes and I imagine it, it's the only thing that's like glistening in there. It's the only thing there that's shining, let's say. It's not the chickens, and that's why he said beside the white chickens. I think if we're gonna understand that, and even the color itself, when he said white
Exactly. Thank you very much. Yeah. Who's speaking?
And-
Abdurrahman, isn't it?
yes, and
Yeah.
because the chickens are white, so most of the time when we see let's say a black image and like a dot of a white color, we only focus on the white color. But he's just trying to explain how glazed with rain the red wheel is. So it's not always about what's the meaning of the poem. If we put ourselves in this situation, then we gotta understand it.
Again, yeah, thank you very much. Really, this is lovely. Thank you, Abdurrahman. Yes, absolutely. Look again what he, you know, the way the red, you know, the color red. He's looking at it in a really beautiful way. So he's saying, wow, I love my wheelbarrow. Look at it, so shining, so beautiful, so lovely, and so dependable. So dependable. I depend on it on a lot of stuff. And he's looking at it in a very romantic way. You know, like looking at your car. I'm saying here, looking at your lovely car that you have. If you buy 2020 or 2021 brand new car, you say, wow, my God, look at this, right? So here really he's looking at this poem with admiration, absolute admiration, isn't it? You have to put yourself into the shoes of the speaker in order to understand the full meaning of the poem. You have to adopt really the speaker's position in order to say, whoa, wow, I like that. So really the poem here is only a poem because of the format, the way, you know, you can see each line you can see the 2 lines each, and the second line is 1 word. So much depends upon, you know. Why didn't he use upon on the same line? You know, he put it another line. Again, a red wheelbarrow. He separated the words. A red wheelbarrow. He went down to the next line. Glazed with rain water. Beside the white chickens. You know, when you look at it, you say, well, there must be here. He wants to say, you know, yeah, maybe I don't have rhyme, but you see, maybe I have a little bit of rhythm if you know how to read my poem. You know, so really this is the idea, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to get here about the question of form, as I was saying to you today. So this is the idea, really. Again, if I will have, maybe I'll stop here. Actually, I will continue from here next time. Okay. Any question, boys and girls? If you have any question, please ask, and I'm going to stop recording.